Hello, I'm Jacob Ayler, back with another edition of the Law Review. Again, I'm Jacob Ayler of the Law Office of Riley Naylor PC, coming to you today with talk about a topic that is really important to me, and I actually just did a blog article on this, focusing on the 5 biggest mistakes that I see that people run into with their either current existing state plan or mistakes they make in the process of forming their first estate plan. The first big mistake is people failing to update their beneficiary information or failing to update their estate documents. It's not uncommon for a lot of people to go in and get an estate plan done when they're young, in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and then sit on it and never amend it. The problem with that is over 20, 30, 40 years, your life is going to change significantly. You may have children that were not mentioned in those documents that were later born. For most people, you're going to have a lot more assets in the first, towards the end of your life than you do when you're 25. And so if you fail to update those documents, that could potentially leave somebody that you love disinherited because they're not mentioned in the document. Or, for instance, I had a woman come in last week who left half of her trust to a very good friend of hers that she had when she was in her 20s, and now she no longer speaks to that person. If we had not updated her information, the document speaks for itself. And so if you fail to update those things, in that case, that person could have ended up with half of this woman's property by windfall just simply because she failed to update her information. So that's probably number one. Number two is I see a lot with the rise of the internet and things going on online. I get a lot of clients that spend money on these do-it-yourself estate plans on the internet. And I know there's going to be pushback because people say, well, you're a lawyer. Of course you want us to come use you. And it doesn't have to be me, but all I have to say is the online buy-it-yourself estate plans, you get what you pay for. A lot of those are canned documents. I'm a big believer that if you're going to spend the money on an estate plan, A, you want to have it done right, but two, and most importantly, is it needs to be tailored to you and your family. No two estate plans are the same. No two families are the same. And when you buy documents without talking to a lawyer about what's in them or how they're drafted, you're just trusting that the person who wrote those documents, A, that they're even applicable to Indiana law, and B, you have no idea what you're signing. So it doesn't have to be through me, but you need to go see somebody about at least reviewing those documents to make sure that they're applicable, if not having something specifically written to yourself. So that's mistake number 2. Mistake number 3 that I run into a lot is overlooking the practicality of appointing certain people in roles that are going to act on your behalf. And what I'm mostly talking about are healthcare representatives, power of attorney, or personal representatives. When I talk about the practicality, sometimes the person that you might choose first may not be the best pick just based on life circumstances. For example, maybe you have a child who you're close with, but if you live in Indiana and your daughter lives in California, it's not going to be very practical for her to be your power of attorney, because if you need her, she's going to have to come back to Indiana and do these things on your behalf, which is not very practical. Naming somebody who's local, who can be there, who has access to you, and can carry out your wishes is a lot more practical. So that's mistake number 3. Mistake number 4 is assuming that their heirs know how they want their affairs to be handled. I get so many clients that come in that tell me, hey, I don't really need to put this in my documents because everybody knows that I'm supposed to give my antique gun collection or my collector car to Billy or whoever it is. But the problem is, unless you put it in that document, it doesn't mean anything. Because your document is what is going to speak. So any statements that you may have made to somebody or promising somebody something, if you don't reflect it in the document, A, they're not going to know for sure, and B, it's not going to be enforceable. So it's been my experience on the estate administration side of things, people want to know what your intent is, and they want to be told what to do because, quite frankly, they have a lot of questions, and it's just much easier for everybody else when it's there in black and white in the document what you want done. Lastly, and this is probably one of the biggest mistakes I see, is people attempting to give their assets in equal shares to their kids, but mixing and matching assets. And what I mean by that, for example, is, I had a farmer one time come in and said, well, I want all my kids traded equally. This guy had 3 kids, but my son is going to farm the ground, so I'm going to give him all the farm ground, and I'm going to give my daughters, my IRA or my investments or whatever. And they were about the same size and value, but what he didn't understand was something could happen to those other assets, and he could unintentionally disinherit one of his kids. Perhaps something bad happens on the farm and you lose the farm. If that happens, now your son gets nothing and the daughters get all the money, or vice versa. Perhaps that farmer gets sick and has to burn that money or spend that money down in a nursing home or on medical bills or any other reason. And now the son gets the land and the daughters get nothing because the money's gone. And so that's why, it's important to talk about how that property is distributed and making sure that it's fair and equal. Because I don't think people intend to do that, but the reality is if you don't set it up correctly, you could inadvertently disinherit somebody that you love without even realizing it. So there are many mistakes that I see, but those are probably the 5 biggest mistakes that I see in estate planning. If you have any questions or if you think this is something that could be applicable to you, give me a call. I'd be happy to talk to you about it. 219-866-3435. Thanks. Bye.